Well, there's the Reverend Candace Cashenden. She's known among us as Reverend Candy, welcoming people to our church, the Athol Congregational Church, and offering a first welcome to any and all comers. For many years, we've been working to do a better job of opening our doors and our hearts to more fully accept, value, and include people who are often left out. It's our belief that we are called to be a community of faith that truly welcomes everyone. And for many people, genuine welcome takes more than just allowing people to come through the door. Why do we believe that we should make such a big effort to really welcome and deeply welcome and include people who we usually don't spend much time with? Where did this idea come from? One source of that teaching in the Old Testament comes from Isaiah, where Isaiah writes that we should open wide the doors of our tents to welcome and include all people, and that that will bring good fruits for all. In the New Testament, one of the statements that Jesus makes is that whatsoever you do unto me, you do unto the least among ye. And I've always thought that also meant that if we welcomed and loved and included and respected, that we're also welcoming, including, and respecting the Lord. But it's also important to note that it's not just something in the Congregational Church or in the Athol Congregational Church, or even in just Christian churches, that most of the wisdom traditions have statements about being welcoming and inclusive and merciful and loving towards all. And a lot of secular organizations have such teachings as well, of the statements of their values and their beliefs that set them to be in a place where their beliefs say that they should welcome and respectfully include all. But important to note that while we focus on the Athol Congregational Church story, that it can be the story of many other organizations, and the same starting places are there in those other organizations as well.
Wherever two or more are gathered, wherever two or more are gathered, there's a reason to step through the doors of inclusion. Think about Allie, a young woman in our church. She can specifically exemplify the 5 stages of being. The first one is fear. When you see someone who doesn't look like you or respond just the way you might anticipate, there are 2 sides of that fear coin. Will she say something unsettling? Will I say something that might offend? Both of those are things we need to think about. Let's think about moving beyond fear, though. Imagine that Allie sticks her head out the door and cries, "Boo!" Well, tolerance would be sort of shrugging and keep going along your way. But acceptance is when she yells, "Boo!" and you turn to your friend and say, "That's just Allie." And then you continue along your way. Understanding is the next step. And what we need to think about there is the time we all end up working on a project with Allie. And we discover that with a little bit of help, she can supervise a small group of children, she can organize a snack, she can work on a project with us. So we discover when we really see Allie, we find out her strengths and her weaknesses, and we see her for the person she really is. And when we get to here, we think we have arrived. We think we're woke and have this all figured out and have mastered inclusion. But we are still a step away. That final step is celebration. Until we can truly delight in working alongside those that are different from us, we haven't arrived. But once we can delight in their strengths and talents and what they bring to a project, then we have met full inclusion. So we have arrived. All you need to do to arrive is to work through your fear, to learn to tolerate difference, to accept that everyone is their own unique person, to understand the gifts and needs that another brings to your organization, and then celebrate who each and every person truly is.
So, how did we get started into all this business of looking to welcome and include other people? Well, I'd been working in human services, working with people with, we say, intellectual disabilities these days, for a number of years, and I got this new job working with a little project called Friends and Associates, kind of based on the ideas, on the teachings of this man, Wolf Wolfensberger, who thought that we should try and help people with intellectual disabilities and others who are oftentimes left out, have kind of patterns of life, experiences of life, opportunities in life, like all the rest of us, based on the assumptions that we're kind of all people first. So one of those ideas was that it would work better for people with disabilities, intellectual disabilities specifically, if they were more actively included participants in community life, if they were integrated into the mainstream of community life. So based on that idea, I got this job with Friends and Associates, and the idea was to help people to have more friends, people with disabilities, have more friends outside of their human services, and more associates, more opportunities of belonging outside of their services. So I had this job and this new idea, and I thought, well, that's really a good idea, something I think is right. I think I'll go give a speech at church and tell people that this is something we should be doing, and that would pretty much resolve the whole situation. That was obviously not a very effective idea. Gave a speech, like oftentimes speeches get made, and people listened and nodded their heads, but nothing really changed as far as how we were acting or who was part of our church life. So one thing that did come out of that meeting, though, was the pastor of the church at the time said, there's this fellow over at the nursing home who every time I go there to do the worship service there, he says, when are you going to get me back to church on Sundays? And I think, well, if you're going to talk like this, that maybe you're the person who could get him back to church on Sundays. So that's how I came to the place of first meeting Lawrence. The pastor brought me over there one time, and we met up with Lawrence and made arrangements for me to bring him to church the following Sunday. Now, I was a little bit nervous when this first happened, especially when the people at the nursing home told me that I was nuts for thinking of bringing this fella out into public and bringing him to church. But we did bring him to church, and it all ended up working out just fine. He came with us on Sundays, and he met us, he sat with me, and it became part of our regular Sunday routine that we'd pick up Lawrence on the way to church, sit with him during church, support him during coffee hour, and then give him a ride back to the nursing home. We did that for a while, and then, things gradually got added into the relationship from there. Things like stopping on the way home so we could pick up some goodies, contraband, I like to think of it, that he would smuggle into the nursing home, mostly for himself, but then over time for a couple of other people as well. And it expanded as well that Lawrence started coming over to our house, and we'd have, once a month or so, we'd have a meal together, a lunch together after worship, and then bring him back over to the nursing home. Somehow or other, Lawrence found that beer and pancakes were a good combination. I can't really understand it, but he found it to be a pleasant treat. So he was part of our lives, and other people at church started helping out, bringing him coffee or sitting with him at coffee hour. Somehow we got everybody in the church to sing happy birthday to him on the Sunday in March that was closest to the 15th, which was his birthday. The kind of the summary of it, the thing that draws it all together for me is our youngest son, when he wrote his senior essay, his college application essay. And that I think the title of it was something like 3 Hours for a Lifetime. And it started out, Lawrence had the pleasure of being a member of my family before I did, as Lawrence had been involved with us before Luke was born. So, it had good impact, and I hope good impact on our kids, as far as their attitudes towards sticking by and being helpful to somebody who wasn't always easy to be with, but was another person, another child of God, along with the rest of us. And that, as well, that involvement with Lawrence was certainly good for him, getting better medical care on a couple of occasions, and having a reason to kind of get out, a reason to go on living. He used to ask us, you'd think during the week, I bet Jan and Tom are doing this now, or I bet they're doing that. We became a real source of life for him outside of the confines of that place.
So there are many people that we have welcomed into our church, and one of them is Allie. Allie has been a member of our church since she was born. Her parents were married here, and she was baptized here. And Allie was born with multiple disabling conditions, but in spite of her challenges, she has grown into a very loving and competent young woman who has been an active part of our church for her whole life. And the church has been part of her life, an important part for her. So Allie was part of Sunday school growing up, like all the other kids. She also was part of our youth group and participated in all the activities. And she became confirmed here at church in along with her peers. As she is now a young adult, she is part of doing many things in the church to help. She helps her mom with the Sunday school, and she helps with special events like pageants, Vacation Bible School, and other fundraisers. And she has formed many very close relationships among people here. We all know Allie, and we all appreciate everything she does. Alan started coming to the Athol Congregational Church about 8 years ago, and the reason he started coming was because we have an elevator. Alan rides in a wheelchair. He has cerebral palsy, and he also uses a voice synthesizer and a communication board. But Alan kept on coming to church, I believe, because of the way that he was welcomed and included. So some of the ways that Alan has participated is that he was in our annual production of Jesus Christ Superstar in the role of an apostle. And then at Christmas time, he was one of the wise men. And he has also read scripture in church using his voice synthesizer. And then there's Susan, who, due to a illness, lost part of her leg, one of her legs, and was physically disabled and found it easier to use a wheelchair versus a prosthetic. So she wanted to be in the bell choir. So we made that happen. And lastly, I'd like to mention the twin young ladies we have in our church who are members, and their names are Amanda and Taylor. And they have autism and have achieved many things. They work and have a social life and do all kinds of great things. They are in their 20s now, and one of their gifts to us is their musical ability. So they both have beautiful singing voices, and they're in our choir, and they often perform duets and solos for our services, and we just think they're great.
As Jan just demonstrated, we have tons of wonderful inclusion happening all around our church these days. So you may be asking yourselves, what's so special? What have they figured out that we haven't yet? You know what? We are a typical New England church. We are a church that has as many varied beliefs and people as you can imagine. We're a congregation that ranges in age from 0 to 100. We have those who are financially struggling and not, college educated and not, physically disabled, cognitively disabled and not. We have people who think that God is the most important thing in their lives, and people who are still figuring out if there is a God. We even have musical people in our church with tremendous gifts. And we have people we wish wouldn't even sing in the shower. But you know what? We have discussed that although we have all of these different things that we have as differences, we agree on one thing. And what we agree on is that we all deserve a place at the table. We want to be accepted for who we are, and we want to accept others for who they are. We didn't set out to change our community, however. It sort of just happened. Years ago, when our ceiling collapsed and fell in, we realized we needed to do something different, and we used that as an opportunity for change. That reality gave us a chance. It gave us the chance to start funding for an elevette that would allow those with mobility issues to access our beautiful sanctuary more easily. Once we did that, we discovered that people with wheelchairs are usually relegated to the back of our sanctuary and thus separate from others. That didn't feel good to us. So instead, we took out a pew towards the front of the sanctuary. And then we created a wonderful space right here where people could be part of the worship service and not set apart. So you see, it's not about building something for special people. And it's not about completely overhauling your program. Instead, it's about looking at the people you already have. Who is it who enters your door? Or maybe we should ask, who is it who cannot even darken the doors? And then we ask, how can we make it possible for them to come and fully access and enjoy all that we do within our church? Within any group or association, this is possible. In fact, we have so many ways that opportunities have emerged. So the questions to ask are, do you have someone coming to your Sunday school who perhaps needs a little assistance? Maybe they need a one-on-one aid or a parent to stay with them so they can fully participate in the program. When we have our local veterans meal in our downstairs hallway, we don't set up one table with all the wheelchairs. Instead, we have a space for a wheelchair at multiple tables, so folks feel fully included. When we were doing our community meals, we discovered when we switched to drive-through, some people don't drive. So we added a delivery option. That way, no one was left out. And when we were filming our services online for the pandemic, we made sure that those who didn't have either access to the internet or the know-how to use the internet could still see our worship services by having them broadcast on AOTV, our local television station. This way, no one was left out of any of these events. Inclusive membership. Striving to include everybody is easy to accomplish. Just look at the people in your community, assess what they need, truly see them, and make one small adaptation for one person, one step at a time. Opportunities emerge daily. Don't let them pass you by.
So Jan just shared a bunch of stories and illustrations really of ways in which people who are usually excluded have been included in church. And they all sound really pretty ordinary. Nothing very special. You know, about somebody showing up to worship on Sunday or somebody being part of a Sunday school class. It's just kind of the ordinary life of a church that has some people included within it. So, you know, that's all good and that's all wonderful, and they are ordinary stories. But one of the realities that we've learned about from good teachers and also from our experience is that it takes a bit more than just kind of a nice idea and for it to really work out, for people to be genuinely part of church life. So we drew some lessons from our experience, lessons about ways in which people might be more effectively included in the life of our church. And one of them was that as we get started in looking to do this, that it has to start with someone having like a vision, and a vision of what it is you're talking about. And Jan and I were very clear and others as well as we talked to them, other folk in leadership roles, and then other people in the church as well. We're very clear that we were talking about people who were usually excluded from the life of our church, being parts of the regular life of our church, and not setting up some kind of special program for them. Because we live in a world where it seems like you're always looking to set up a special program for those people. You know, that we're over here and they deserve something, so we'll set up something different, something special, something separate for them. And what we thought is we didn't want to do that at all. What we wanted to do was to help those folk to become part of the regular life of the church. We can check my artistry here. So that they wouldn't be out over here separate anymore, but they would be part of the regular life of our church. You know, and that not all packed together in one spot, but, you know, people in different places within the church. You know, so that people who were usually kind of on the outs, and even in a separate place if they were in the church, would now be part of the regular life of our church. So that was our vision. And that's what we worked with Lawrence in the story that I told earlier. And that's kind of the example that got set. So then, if we're looking to build this, one lesson is you got to have a vision. You got to think about what it is you want to have happen, what you want to build with and for people. You got to start out with a vision. Be clear about what your hope is and also what your hope isn't. You know, you want to be clear about what you want to avoid. So, other lessons. The first one is you got to walk the walk. If we were going to think about our church being more of an inclusive place for people, that you got to live it in your own life first. You can't say to other people, this is a really good idea, you do it, but it's not for me. But then after that, you can talk the talk. You know, you can talk the talk and you can do it with some authority, with some standing, with some bona fides. That if you're living it, if you're walking the walk, then you can talk the talk and people can be clear that you're not just another person giving a speech. And then a key lesson is that you want to look to recruit and invite the support and the participation of others. And it says recruit and invite, not mandate, not try and guilt people into it, but you want to invite and support people with the disabilities, or people who are usually left out, support them to be included as part of things, but support others in welcoming them in big ways and in little ways, but just giving ideas about how we might be helpful to someone as part of the regular life of our church. Another lesson is you want to broaden and deepen this, what's called these days a lot of times inclusion, gradually. You know, you don't say, boy, it'd be great to have a fully integrated church where all the parts of the body are represented, and we'll do that by sometime late next week, or even late next year. This is an ongoing effort. People have been separated from us, many people for even generations, and welcoming them and including them back in is a gradual effort involving all kinds of people. And then, of course, there's going to be problems. People are involved, there will be problems. I mean, that's kind of a universal lesson, whether it's folks with disabilities, other people who are usually left out, or whoever it is. There will be problems, and you got to work through those. Sometimes it requires creativity. How can we make the Sunday school class work for this person? You know, or how can this person who sometimes speaks a little too often during worship, how can we support them to kind of make sure that they take a reasonable amount of time, that they take their turn? All kinds of problems. And you just work through those. Problems are things to be worked through, not reasons to exclude people. You want to avoid overwhelming the assimilation potential. Boy, doesn't that sound teachy. You know, but what we mean with that is that we wanted to make sure we stayed as the Athol Congregational Church that included people who were different, who were usually left out. And we didn't want to become the church for those people that would have just overwhelmed our ability to really include folks. Then you want to enjoy the adventures. When I talked about Lawrence earlier on, I shared some of the ways in which our family and others have enjoyed the involvement with Lawrence. You know, the Lawrence stories that are still kind of a glue for our family. And you want to look to share those stories as well, because the stories kind of illustrate the reality. And I don't mean stories like you're making up stories. I mean the stories of what's happened in real life. And then, of course, on an ongoing basis, if you want to be a leader in helping people to be included, you've got to live that demonstration. It's not just a part of a performance or part of a job or an assignment or whatever. It becomes part of who you are. It becomes part of your life. You live the demonstration. You live the reality in your own life, and you do that both humbly and persistently. And that it brings reward for all. The people who had been left out, who are now included, for those who stand by them individually and collectively, and really for the whole life of our church. There's good fruit for the whole life of our church.
Tom helped us see how to build valued inclusion, and I hope we've demonstrated that it can be done. The question is, why? As Simon Sinek asks, what is the reason? Why are we doing this? Well, there are many benefits. It's so much beyond the right thing to do. We benefit when everybody gets a chance to move out of their comfort zone. Fear dissipates and creativity is sparked when we open the doors to new people, when we walk over the threshold into welcoming new folks into our community. There are so many benefits for each of us. Whether you are a church or an organization or a civic group, full inclusion is within your grasp. So the next time someone knocks on your door, use it as an opportunity to open your door a little bit wider.